you know, even just listening to these sounds. Like this was a electric guitar that I've just done a few clicks to, and now we have this unique sound. And like, if you had to tell me to make this sound, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, and here we are, I made it in maybe 5 minutes of that. So what's up, guys? Serum 2 has just dropped. Very exciting moment because we've been living with Serum for a while, so it's about time it had an upgrade, and what an upgrade they've come out with. Personally, I think it's really put it on a level in comparison with Omnisphere, another fantastic plugin. We're going to compare why and listen to some of the sounds and dive straight into it. So let's go. So welcome back to the channel, guys. Chris here. So like I said, we're checking out Serum 2. We've got it here, as you can see on the screen. Now, why do I think this is going to be a strong competitor against Omnisphere? Well, just compare the two. If we look at them face by face, you can see Omnisphere has 4 parts. It's got effects, ARP, the main section, this orb, as well as that whole thing times 8. So this is the main thing that will actually separate Omnisphere from a lot of different plugins, is the fact that it's a multi-timbral synth. Means that you've got all of these layers now, all with their own controls, all with their own effects, so things all of a sudden get really complicated and large. But if we look at it at its basic form, say we're only using one of these parts with our 4 oscillator / samples, effects, arpeggiation, that in itself now really closely links up with Serum. So if we take a look at Serum, if you've never seen it before, it's a fantastic plugin synthesizer that you can do a lot with, now even more so since they've originally started with wavetables, now have included things like multi-samples, granular. It did have a little access to samples, but you would set up a sample as a wavetable and you'd have to play through the wavetable to almost get a similar played version of that sound in Serum. Whereas now you can just go in to the actual sample section and actually pick out, they've got some factory samples here. So say I want brass wall low. So I can play that sample. Bear in mind, this is just a 1 note. So it's the same sample played across the keyboard. So if you play it really high, it plays it really fast. And if you play it really low, it plays it really slow. Right? So I would say main feature number 1 is the true incorporation of samples into Serum. Obviously, we've got the single sample, but if we go into something like multi-sample, I'm just going to pick I've got drums, for example. Say I go 909 or 808. And you can see here that now each key is a different sample, and depending on some of the samples like this, they even have velocity sensitivity. So this is very much similar to how Contact works, actually using a very similar way that the samples are laid out. But yeah, so now with one, oscillator, in this case, we're using a multi-sample oscillator, we have access to a whole combination of sounds. So say I went into oscillator B, turn that on, again, select multi-sample, and this time I'm going to use another electronic kit. Say we go 505. And now we actually have these 2 samples together. So, this might actually be clipping a bit because I've got it cranked right now. So I'm just going to pull down the volume. So where we once started with our single 808 sample and our single 505 sample, now we can combine the 2. And even though this is one of the many features now available with Serum, this is a feature that I got so sucked into, was this multi-sample section, because I just found myself literally playing through all of these samples, and they've got plenty of samples. I'll show you my favorite one is this guitar. It's either this one or this one. Let's see. I think it's this one. The Guitar Acoustic Martin Velocity. Wicked. Now, bear in mind, a lot of these multi sampled sounds, say we take something like a piano, I don't think you're really gonna get the full feeling of like comparing this to something like Keyscape. You know, this isn't thousands of samples. You can clearly count how many samples they're using, but they've got more than one sample, which is already more than we've had access to in Serum. So something like this baby grand piano sounds like this. Doesn't sound too bad. I mean, you can hear that we don't actually have maybe the accurate kind of amp envelope that the piano might have. There's no release, so maybe we'll add a bit of that. But, you know, the fact that this is even possible is fantastic. Now, I'm going to get lost in this multi-sample section forever, so let's move on to some of the new things we've got, such as, obviously, sample is the single version of what we're talking about, and we have plenty of samples to pick from, so you're going to have endless time just figuring this out. And then the granular section. This plays the single samples, as you can see here, so got a couple different sounds. Let's find maybe this trombone, actually. Just so you can hear an example of what this is doing. You can see we've got a couple of controls, how the granules are played, basically, forward, backwards, reversed. So if I maybe add a little bit of randomization, we can change the direction of some of them. Change the length, random pan. Obviously passes through a filter. Change the gain of some of the notes. So maybe in the case of this, I might want it to loop. So let's do forward and backwards, and like this, you can see we've got this tiny little loop section here where we can extend. And so you see now this is just going to play inside that loop. And if I put a bit of this, it will actually add a little crossfade between the loops. So say it wasn't playing forwards and backwards. Let's go forwards. So that's going to loop in between there, and I can obviously change the fades. We can go ahead and, you know, change a lot more details outside of just that. But I'm getting sidetracked. Let's keep looking. We've got the Spectral section, and this is something that really blew me away. So looking at this, you can see it's used the trombone sample. Let's just pick a new one for the sake of the example. And you can see it's come up in a spectral mode. Now, the beautiful thing about this is we can actually affect this quite uniquely. So we can add whether it's a warp mode, or we can actually change how quickly it plays through the sample. If I go backwards, it will actually play it in reverse. You know, you start to hear some of the features of the sound come through. And then we've obviously got some extra stuff. We've got a filter here that we can just draw in as we please. And this filter is actually going to change how the spectral kind of image is looking. Very interesting. Personally, I really like that you got these spectral warp modes now. And so say I go on something like gate, put this scan back to normal, open this up. Now this gate, you can see, is actually gonna gate that spectral sound. And I think it's just so fascinating that you have access to all of this wonderful sound. I don't even know where I would explain, but all of these modules that you can just really mess with to really take your sound into another dimension. Serum, I found, I've been using Serum for quite a few years now, I would say. It never failed to disappoint me in inspiration. Personally, there's always a few ways you can get lost in patching and creating sounds, but now it's just on a whole other level, especially with all these features. It's going to be sound design for days. I should also recommend, check out Virtual Riot has done a wonderful video. It's kind of like taken from a live stream, but if you go on his channel, I'll check that out, because he, as a sound designer, he goes into this in such a wonderful way. I really enjoyed watching him talk about this. Mainly, I'm going to talk about this from players, musicians' perspective. I really like these synthesizers as opposed to doing loads of sound design. I just like browsing through presets and finding stuff that I really like. But, you know, just listening to these sounds. Like, this was a electric guitar that I've just done a few clicks to, and now we have this unique sound. And like, if you had to tell me to make this sound, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, and here we are. I made it in maybe 5 minutes of that. So fantastic. We've got Spectral, we've got multi-sample, samples, granular, all of this cool stuff. So moving on, what else do we have? So the first thing, just looking at this screen, we've got a whole set of new macros. We used to have just 4, now we've got 8, which is great. This envelope section pretty much has stayed the same. We do have some zoom in features here in case you really want to be specific about it. This LFO section has changed slightly. Now we've got some preset waves which we can, you know, click and drag if we want to do something like that, to do something like this. Or what I thought was quite cool was we now have these chaos LFOs that do this crazy thing. So say I had this mapped to like, oh yeah, and you can map X and Y, because now it's no longer kind of just 0 to 100%. We have this whole 3D thing going on, so we can map two things such as, let's do cutoff and let's do resonance. So now you see as it moves up, let's slow this down actually, so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. So you can see here, let's speed it up. As it moves to the side, it closes the filter, but as it goes up and down, the resonance is changing. Like all of these crazy sounds. I'm gonna speed up this LFO, so we're just getting a bit more movement with that filter. There's a little bit of weirdness going on in this sound. I really don't know what it is, but I'm not complaining as well. It's quite, I think you gotta be a bit open to exploring some of these synthesizer depths, especially when you don't really know what you're doing. So with that in mind, let's dive a bit further. So a new feature of this, the mixer. This wasn't really a thing in Serum before, but I quite like this because an issue I found with the original Serum was that I would always be, my signal would always be too hot or too quiet. I could never really visualize it. Whereas now, in this case, I'm using one oscillator, one filter, no effect. So it's very easy to actually see what's going on in terms of volume. But I was playing a patch earlier where it sounded really like crispy and distorted, and I wasn't clipping the output. I couldn't see what was going on. I went into the mixer and I could see that the oscillator on its own was way too loud and it was just absolutely pinning in the red. So you just go in, you pull that down, and all of a sudden the sound clears up. So it makes it really easy to visualize. I mean, fantastic. You also have a little bit of bussing going on. Now, this is where things I thought got a bit interesting, but a bit complicated, because if I was talking about mixing or production, buses and separate filters and all this stuff, fantastic. You want a little bit of option, but for a synthesizer, this is where things started blowing my mind, because I was like, so taking a look at this sound, you can see here in the mixer is that we also have the option for buses. So say I want to send it to bus 1. This is where things I found got a little bit complicated in the sound design department, because now all of a sudden your signal flow is simple. It was oscillator, everything in between, you know, amp, filter, effects, output. But now you can start to have different oscillators going to different places. So say I'm gonna just pick a wavetable for this next one, pull it down slightly. We can also send that to the filter if we want. And now if we go into the mixer, you can see I can send one oscillator to bus 2 and the other one to bus 1. We can even send them to 2 different filters each if we want. But now I can go to my effects and you can see I can also process those sounds separately because I have the 2 buses, which this also opens a whole bunch of doors. But for the sake of keeping this video relatively simple, let's stick with just the effects in the main section. We've got a couple new effects. We've got this bode, we've got these splitters, the utility, as well as a couple extras in some of the already existing effects. And we also have this convolve, which I quite like. So let's start there. Convolve, basically like a convolution reverb or an impulse responses. Doesn't necessarily have to be a reverb if you're talking about a convolution. It can just be a sample of a certain area or sound or medium. So say I've got an old radio and I want to record that. If I recorded a sine wave sweep going through that, I could capture the sound of that box. I could have it come in something like this. So as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different types of, not necessarily just spaces, which we also have spaces, but we also have, in this case, guitar cabs. We've got pencil, suitcase, piano, and then some reverbs. We've got some weird spaces, chains. So this is what I mean. It's like now, again, we're just doing some more craziness. This was our sound, and we've transformed it to this. Woo! Hella loud. It's probably clipping through those speakers right now, but wicked. And honestly, we're still really loving this sound that we're working with. I'll probably end up saving it by the end of this video, but just to keep diving through what we got, because there's plenty to come, let's add some more effects. Let's try bode. So now without the convolve. So bode is a frequency shifter. And you can do all of this craziness with it. Oh, there we go. But it's lovely when you get just a little bit of movement with it. Patch is a little bit quiet. Let's turn it up. Wicked. Sounds so good. So let's check out some more of the new effects and the distortion. You can see we've also had an update on the look of all of these. In the case of distortion, oh, so dirty. We have all the same distortion modes, but a couple of new ones at the bottom. Soft saturation, overdrive, which overdrive and stomp box I'm in love with. But overdrive, and you can even stack how many overdrives you want. Oh my. That sounds sick. Let me put this in mono real quick. That's wild. But there you go. Distortion, sounding wicked. We've got some extra fun features in there. And then obviously we've got these splitters, so you can split your sound into frequencies. In this case, low, high, low, medium, or high, or even mid and sides. And this I really like. Let's get it out of mono. We've turned the distortion off. Oh, we're still in mono. So let's say on the sides, now I want a little bit of a delay. So we can go in, add the delay. Let's get some more stuff happening on the sides. So if I add some unison, we can start to hear that delay now. And maybe on the mids, I can have, I don't know, a filter. So now technically we're only hearing those sides. I'm going to pull this back. Nice. So if I turn off the sides, you can hear what that's doing. Let's make it a bit tighter. Technically, we're only hearing the sides right now. Exactly, because that's taken out. But another beautiful feature of Serum is that we now have access to use as many effects as you want. This is another thing that I think puts a little bit of a step ahead to Omnisphere, is that Omnisphere obviously had banks of effects, but you pretty much had like 5 at a time. This is obviously you're dealing with one sound at a time, but now it's a bit more global. Just gonna give this a quick listen. Ooh, and let's open up that mids. Woo! I could go ahead and I can add an LFO to this cutoff, you know, and then all of a sudden we've got movement on the mids. It's like, it's endless possibilities. I'm just getting lost in it, just trying to tell you guys about it, but without getting too, you know, distracted. Before I move off from the effects, you've obviously got some effect presets. So these would be whole, you know, patches of presets, which is very good. You can even make some utilities if maybe there's certain effects that you like to use but have them set in a certain way. Do that, that's great. Matrix, all pretty much the same. I mean, you do have access to change the mod control, which apparently you couldn't do before, but I know there is one of these that existed, whether it was this one or this one, but one of them didn't exist, so there you go. So global, you got all your classic global settings. Some of the global settings have actually moved to the front page, but now you got things like voice control, which I really like. So you see, every time I press a note, this kind of steps over. And so what this allows me to do is change all of these things dependent on the note. So say I wanted to have that classic analog, every note pans left and right. I could literally, well, I could just do this. There we go. And so now every note is going to pan. Let's see, do I have any effects on here that I can turn off? I'll turn off this. So you hear, you start to get that very kind of analog synth stereo, which is nice. I really love that. And you can even save them as presets. Look at that, how good. But yeah, that's just changing pan. You can detune certain notes, and then all of a sudden if you press a chord, you start to get a bit of that, you know, spread in there, and maybe a bit more of that analog-esque sound, you know, that you'd get from a synthesizer. So really wicked that they've incorporated this. We've pretty much looked at all the main pages. A couple more things they've added. So if we're looking at this page, obviously they've got 2 filters, 1 and 2, and you can select which ones, whether it's which oscillators or the noise or the sub, which one you want to send to which filter. Or you also have the option, if you can see here, say this oscillator is only going to filter 1, this oscillator is going to both. I can click on this and you can actually create a blend of which filter it's going to. If you want just one or the other or a bit of both, you can do that. You can even send to the buses from here. Got change the outputs as well if you want. There's a lot of mapping that's going on now. So checking out the Arpeggiator section here, you can see apparently this is similar to Ableton, which is what I heard. So we've got all your classic Arpeggiator controls. We've got your pattern, transpose, playback, retrigger, velocity, some global effects, and then here we also have different styles of arpeggiation. So what's really cool is if you go into the lower notes down here, I can actually change this, and this is the same with the clips. If I go an octave down, I can change some of the clips that are available, but we don't have this on yet, so we'll get there. But what this allows me is to actually set up either numerous types of arpeggiation, which I can change by a key switch, or we can just have it doing the one, you know, arpeggiation thing. So if we just check out some of the patterns, let's try thumb up. Oh, that's cool. Pinky up, pinky down, I see. Wow. You also got a really lovely little visualization here. Go in, change the rate. Then we can also transpose, so let's find a normal pattern. Let's go up and down, beat it up a bit. Let's change the range. And this is how I would say it's got a similar vibe to Ableton, is this whole shifting section. You know, how many notes you want to shift and how many octaves. And we can even change how it's playing the other transposed notes. That's bad. I mean, it's just meant to play it kind of up and down, but it's got this whole crazy pattern. Oh, and when I hold the sustain, it latches, which is cool. Got that there, fantastic. But I'll leave the rest of the arpeggiation controls for you guys to discover, because there's so much we're going to talk about. So going into the clip mode, we now actually have a full clip editor. We can actually, oh my, this is going to sound interesting. We've still got that arpeggiator on, so if these notes were long, so you can hear there, we've got plenty of options. We've now got this whole editor, and as well, if you go into the preset browser over here, each preset has a clip, like paired with it. So, that was a very niche sound, but there you go. All of these have access to clips, so you've got plenty of options in terms of, you know, you can import your own MIDI sequences into the clips, have it just play out things you like. Ooh! And I just remembered another nice feature is that I was really happy with that patch I had created. So if I keep clicking back, it's gonna take us back to our patch, and I haven't even saved it yet. That's so good. So let's turn off the ARP for now. Don't need it. Sounds sick. Chuck on that convolve effect. Turn that down a bit. We can delete the splitter. Don't need that. Don't need this. Just really loving that sound. I think it takes me to like Jack and Daxter and that kind of gameplay, like taking me back in time to my childhood. So I touched on it a little bit before, but the warp modes, we've got 2 of them. As you can see in this instance, we're using some specific spectral warp modes that you can't actually see if you're just on a normal wavetable. They've also changed this FM. We've got true FM, whereas before this PD, this phase distortion, was your original FM on Serum 1. So there you go. You got that new thing. You've even got distortion filters built into these, and this would work like a classic filter. So say I'm going to turn off this spectral, and I'm also going to turn off this convolve. So now we're just hearing the sample. If I chuck on, say, a filter, and now we even have this warp mode, which allows us to change certain aspects of those. Right, so we've got that, we've got distortion, and I love this because it actually changes the shape of the wave as if it was distorting, you know? So you have all this craziness. And I also just find it really fascinating to see how this stuff would react. Like, it's kind of like looking at a oscilloscope or something, you know? It's quite fascinating. But there you go. So we've got some extra warp modes. If you wanted to change the phase and the random phase of each oscillator, that's now just up here. That would be your random phase, and this would be where it starts. I'm also going to minimize that panning just so we've got it on default. So say I change this random phase. We actually start to get a little bit of width because now there's this random starting position of each waveform. Okay, wow. So there's clearly a lot of new features with Serum. I'm learning more and more about this every day that passes. I'm trying to like get my hands into it again now that I've, you know, it's almost re-energized my love for Serum now that they've come out with Serum 2. That's also free if you've already got Serum, free upgrade, which is fantastic. But there you have it. Could this actually be a competitor for Omnisphere? I know Omnisphere is a lot bigger in its package, you could say. It's got a bit more of everything. But now this is offering us almost a similar boat where we can have a mix of samples, waveforms. In its samples, I didn't even go into this. It's actually got samples, and I can go into here, and it's even got synthesizers, and these all sound really wicked. So like, you know, you could go in and you could do a similar Omnisphere thing where you can get synth sounds that are samples, or you can use wave shapes, or you can have a mix, you can have numerous filters, you can modulate pretty much everything. You've got these wacky, crazy LFOs that I've never seen before. I mean, effects for days. I think it's going to be pretty good. I'll be real. I think the samples on Omnisphere, I mean, Omnisphere has a massive preset browser for a start. You're definitely not going to find a piece of software with as many presets as Omnisphere. But saying that, I do think that, you know, how this holds up is clearly really at a solid level, and I think it's going to be a game-changing tool. It's already a game-changing tool. It's only going to get better by this point, so I'm very excited to really dive deep into this. I think I'm going to end this video just some presets. I've made a couple of sounds, and I'm just dive through some of the new sounds that they've incorporated in there. But that's about it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section below. Do you own Serum 2? Have you tried it before? Are you excited to try it? Let us know. We'll have a chat about it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. The support really helps. Thank you to anyone who's already done so. Once again, I've been Chris Fellow. I'll see you on the next one. Let's hear this thing.